So hi, I'm Dr. Martin Rutherford. I am a certified functional medicine practitioner and a chiropractor since like 1979.
Dr. Randall Gates, board certified chiropractic neurologist, also a chiropractor.
We do these hangouts, we do these presentations every week in order to bring you data that we have seen in our practice to be relevant. Sometimes we actually will see changes in our methods, our clinical methods of going forward with chronic pain and chronic issues by trying different things that we do relative to neurological work. Dr. Gates is a board certified functional neurologist, chiropractic functional neurologist. I'm a certified functional medicine practitioner, and our practice kind of developed into an autoimmune practice. And then secondarily, it's been getting even a little bit more refined towards neurological issues, dizziness, vertigo, balance, peripheral neuropathy. Believe it or not, chronic fatigue can even be neurologically involved. And one of the things that we have seen, one of the things we've treated, we have treated autistic spectrum children, selected autistic spectrum children after a pretty thorough review, probably for about 7 years now, 7 years, 6 years.
We started out treating them, and then we stopped. We took a break from that patient demographic just for a variety of reasons, nothing against
logistics reasons that we had to,
but just within the element of really trying to go back and look at the model again. We wanted to verify a few things that we were thinking about, and so we were constantly scouring the literature, and then we kind of came to an opinion that we could start working with autistic patients again. And that's what we've done.
So last week there was an article in the Wall Street Journal. I try to keep up on the various health websites in the major publications out there, whether it's ABC or NBC or Fox, or whether it's the Wall Street Journal. I'm always interested in what the public is hearing. There was an article in there last week on the Wall Street Journal, and it was by two scientists. And this, normally we are enormously more specific than this, but unfortunately I was the one who saw the article. I let it go. I haven't been able to recover it. But it was an article on, it was titled, Why We Should Eat More Dirt, or We Don't Eat Enough Dirt. And of course it caught my attention.
I believe microbes were in the title too.
Okay. Yeah. And so talked about microbes and not eating enough dirt. The article was essentially ultimately written by two apparently well-regarded scientists in the field. And they, gave a story about how their grandfathers or somebody told them, or a doctor that they knew told them that we didn't eat enough dirt in this country, and that would help our microbiome. And well, he didn't say that, but it would help us. It would help our immune systems. And they said certainly that's coming to be. They then went into the microbiome of the gut, and they listed in the second or third paragraph a number of conditions that we're seeing improvement with changing the microbiome. And they talked about thyroid problems. They talked about arthritis. They talked about cognition. Just the thyroid. They talked about a number of things that they saw were changed by changing the diet, blood sugar by change. And they also happened to list autism in the middle of about 10 things, this and this and this, and autism and this and this and this. I read the article. I think I'm have a wide enough background, having been involved in treating thousands of these gut problems, not exaggerating, and in our clinic here. And I thought it was a really well-written article. I was excited about it. I thought people need to hear this. This is just one more step out there. And then a couple of days later, there was a letter to the editor. I'm sure a well-intended letter, I think. But in the first paragraph, and it was my impression, my recollection, that it sounded like it was from the head of an organization that felt that they were pretty well schooled in autism. They said, wow, this was a very nice, I was very excited about reading it. It was very interesting. And then went on to denigrate these authors for indicating that the gut microbiota, that the bacteria in the gut caused or affected autism. She kind of threw it in a little bit with the vaccination people. And I thought it was a very unfair letter based on what we've seen, in this clinic, based on anecdotal stories from lots and lots. I don't know, lots and lots, if that's scores and scores or if that's a couple hundred, but a lot of moms who came in and said, I'm here because I've heard what you do. I've heard what alternative doctors do. And I noticed that when I took my kid off of gluten, they calmed down, or their seizures decreased or went away, or their functions were better, or they stopped being hyperactive and things of that nature. And that combined with the results that we've seen in altering the gut in these types of cases just just made me think, we should really say something about this. I'm not sure if I could pull it up, maybe I'll even write a letter. I don't know if it's too late, to the Wall Street Journal, but at this point in time, we're talking to you. We're talking to the person who might be interested in understanding that there is scientific research. And that Dr. Gates did is like, yeah, there's definitely scientific research out there. There's scientific research that really will produce clinical results. We're not saying it's going to cure autism, but we're going to say your gut has a lot to do with brain function, period. Mm-hmm. And so from that point, I'm going to turn it over to you, because Dr. Gates is the board certified chiropractic functional neurologist, and this is his field. He works directly with these children. He's not going to share anything with you that he has not either researched or observed in our clinic. So I'll turn it over to you.
So as a board certified chiropractic neurologist, what we do is referred to as functional neurology, which means we go into the brain. If a certain area of the brain is not functioning well, we try to stimulate that area of the brain through either exercises or sensory stimulations to get someone's brain to start functioning better. Now, we've combined that discipline with functional medicine, which looks at the underlying nutritional, bacterial, inflammatory causes of so many systemic diseases. And with melding these two approaches, that's what we've done in our clinic and have had some pretty cool results. Now, relative to this whole debate on autism, autism is an incredibly hot, emotionally provoking topic currently in our society, understandably. You have parents who have children with autism, and that's a great burden on them from a number of perspectives, not only the burden on the patient who has autism and the pain that they're going through. And the problem is that this autism issue is becoming an epidemic, is raising in terms of prevalence at an exponential rate. At least according to the current statistics, now it's estimated as of 2014, the most recent CDC classification that I saw, 1 in 42 boys have autism, 1 in 68 children, because it more commonly affects boys than girls. So 1 in 68 children, but 1 in 42 boys have this disorder. So a lot of people are scrambling, trying to figure out the cause. And of course, it's a controversial topic. As you brought up, we have the vaccine issue, which is highly, highly contested, that we're not going to touch in today's topic. But we are going to talk about these gastrointestinal bacteria, because for someone to come out and write an opinion statement to the Wall Street Journal saying that, it really infuriated them. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not taking exact verbiage, but it infuriated them that these scientific investigators, I believe they're immunologists, looking at the relationship between the gut microbiome being your gut flora, and autism, and that there's no relationship there, or very little of a relationship. I think we need to talk about that a little bit more to examine this point. And what you have to understand is the average individual out there, you hear this term literature thrown around so often, or scientific research. There's scientific research, or there's no scientific research. And a lot of people don't really understand what qualifies as scientific research. And a lot of people don't understand that there can be a lot of scientific research building up to something, but we don't have what's termed the randomized control clinical trial. Lots of times it will take 17 years to identify one drug, one therapy, apply it to a group. You have to go through different phases of clinical trials to eventually say there's scientific research that this drug does this in this individual. So where we're at with autism, this whole autism epidemic is relatively new. Conservatively, we can say since the late 90s, or we could even say since the early 2000s, this epidemic has been coming upon us. And because of that, scientists have been kind of scrambling to try and figure these relationships out. And we haven't had one study over 17 years looking at one variable for one thing, because scientists have just had to start jumping into the problem to figure out what the variables even are. And that's where we're at. And there is an abundance of research, really, and you can find it at www.powerhealthtalk.com. You can just search autism. Today's broadcast will come up, and you'll see at least 20 references that we attached to this broadcast that I coalesced pretty rapidly in the last 24 hours. There's far more. And it's kind of like our leaky gut broadcast. We attached 110 references to that broadcast, and that didn't even do justice to the entirety.
We were a little bit attacked on that, doing leaky gut, and then how this is, oh, you leaky gut people, and then we got the negativity, and there's no scientific background on it, and you're selling these, you're like snake oil salesmen. So I think Dr. Gates came up with how many? 110.
If I remember correctly.
And he says, I think this should be enough. In other words, there were a lot more. So, yeah.
And with today's broadcast, we attached some pretty powerful articles. And
yes,
I'm going to kind of go rogues compared to how we normally do this. I'm just going to read you some scientific articles or some abstracts or pieces of abstracts from these articles, just so you as the individual out there, you just get a general idea of this. So on the relationship between microbes and autism, and refuting basically the comment that there's no relationship. This comes from the World Journal of Gastroenterology, published in January of 2016. And in this article, they said, up to now, available evidences display that the impairment of gut microbiota plays a key role in the development of autism and mood disorders. It plays a key role. The application of therapeutic modulators of gut microbiota to autism and mood disorders has been experienced only in experimental settings to date, with few but promising results. So what they're saying is that there is a relationship. Now that they know there's a relationship, people are trying to study different therapies. They're saying point blank, we haven't had a lot of these studies done, but the ones that are being done are very promising.
And the therapeutic modulators would be
probiotics, dietary changes, things of that nature is what they're talking about. Yeah. And then we can go another route. Let's go to the journal Neuroscience, pretty coveted journal in the brain world. June of 2016, here they said, although the exact etiology and pathology of autism spectrum disorders remain unclear, a disorder of the microbiota gut-brain axis is emerging as a prominent factor in the generation of autistic behaviors. So from this, we can say, they're not saying that, yes, we have the ultimate holy grail cause of autism. That's not what we're saying here. But to say that there's no link is also really not true, because there's an abundance of data now building, causing these investigators to say, hey, and this is a neuroscience journal. These are usually people who are looking at different drug delivery problems. They're looking at different ways the nervous system is patterned, and they're stopping their focus on that, saying, hey, we have the problem of autism. We really need to look at the gut microbiota, because that really seems to be a key generator of this condition.
And going back to what we're doing, going back to our clinical experience, I mean, we didn't go into this understanding we were going to develop an autoimmune neurological practice. And one of the things that we've seen is that there was one yesterday, I can't remember what it was, and somebody was telling me about one of their relatives, and they said they have this, and they have that, and they have that symptom, and they have this symptom in their shoulder, and this symptom in their gut, and this in their left toe. And I immediately said they probably have an autoimmune problem, because as we expand, we start to see more and more and more autoimmunity. I don't know if any of these research studies are referring to it, but most people now, thanks to probiotics on television and their commercials, know that 70% of the immune system is in the gut. And that if you calm down the gut, you're not only changing that microbiota, but you're also changing that immune response too. So
absolutely. And I'm going to go into that too.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of simplicity being applied to this topic, because now there's identification that the gut has this powerful effect on so many systemic diseases. So people just think, oh, the gut, so let's give them probiotics. Oh, it's the gut, let's put them on this diet. And it's far, far, far more nuanced than that. In fact, there was this article out of the Journal of Pediatric Gastroenterology and Nutritional Management. Yeah, Nutrition, Journal of Pediatric Gastroenterology and Nutrition. And it was from this year, May of this year. And they basically looked at patients with autism with other pediatric gastroenterology problems. So let me say that differently. So they looked at autistic patients and they looked at other little kids who had GI problems who didn't have autism. And they basically saw that they all had inflammation, they all had leaky gut, and they had the same biomarker, so to speak. So they said, well, really, there's no connection between the gut and autism, which is just absurd. That's like saying, well, you know, there's inflammation with all these rheumatology disorders like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and Sjogren's disease, and let's just throw our hands up because, you know, it's there with all of them, so there must be no link. That's the analogy.
Right.
So you really have to be careful with what you're getting delivered to you through the media. You really have to go back and read the research and understand the context of everything. And one other thing I wanted to cite here, this was kind of the tipping point article for us. This came out in the World Journal of Gastroenterology 2014. And they were talking about an American Pediatric Society. So they said here, an expert panel of American Academy of Pediatrics has strongly recommended further investigation in the role of GI abnormalities in the pathophysiology of autism spectrum disorder. So here this big pediatric coalition is saying, you know, we need to investigate this more. But then they went on to say, this gastroenterology group, the significant increase in the prevalence of autism spectrum disorders, at least 78% from 2002 to 2008 in the US, reported by the CDC in 2012, is a strong indication for revisiting critically every possible factor and look for possible clues in order to slow down or prevent the sharp increase in the prevalence of autism spectrum disorders in our young population and find more therapeutic opportunities to treat autism spectrum disorders more efficiently. And I listed out some sticky notes. We attached lots of different articles to today's broadcast. Other ones were examining how gut bacterial byproducts are very different in autistic patients versus normal patients. They give these autistic patients an antibiotic to kill off these bad bacteria, and all of a sudden these byproducts normalize, things of that nature. They're finding high levels of yeast overgrowth in autistic patients versus normal healthy controls. We're finding different concentrations of certain bacteria in autistic patients that seem to correlate with immune cell production of inflammatory chemicals. This is all from the research. So for all the autistic mothers out there, and we really hope that you're watching this broadcast, because lots of times the autistic parents are the ones who come under the greatest scrutiny because they're changing the diet. And they're looking at every possible therapy available because really right now there's no mainline therapy for autism. So much of it has fallen back on the parents. And so parents are doing these things, and unfortunately they come up against criticism, like was demonstrated in the Wall Street Journal there, saying there's no link between all these things. And there is a link, and the link is growing. And just know, as we were so kindly profiled in a blog regarding one of our autistic patients and his improvements relative to some symptoms. And the mother was saying, you know, I just didn't realize how complicated this gut relationship was. And she was doing so many things, but she said, you know, I'm not a doctor, I'm a mother. And so sometimes you have to leave it to the hands of a doctor who really focuses in this area, because the nuances of fixing these gastrointestinal problems as it relates to the brain, and then also understanding how the brain relates to the gastrointestinal tract. That's really the other major key. Is very detailed. It's an involved subject. So that's my take on this. That's really all I had to say.
And to go on to that, you know, these folks are kind of considered kind of offbeat. The moms, you're crazy, you're doing this. I mean, it's almost like literally, like, to me, what struck me was this letter is almost like bullying, like you're like not going to think that, and because we haven't found that, and we've embraced this model. But to try to take this data out of the realm of some sort of left-wing or right-wing nutty theory, Dr. Gates has, as he said, he has produced a number of very valid pieces of data. But just in general, just in general, forget the specificity of the gut and the brain relative to autism. Just in general, we've created kind of a paradigm for chronic problems and chronic pain, of which autism kind of fits into that problem if you were to understand our paradigm. And one of the key factors to, I don't care whether it's autism or whether it's dizziness or vertigo or balance or whether it's hormonal problems that won't respond to care, one of the key issues to this, or chemosensitivities, we just had a lady come in yesterday from there. One of the key issues is this gut-brain vicious cycle involved at the core of virtually causing every one of these conditions to not be able to stabilize itself. So it's not really a far reach if you understand, and how much data is there on that? Like there's whole journals being dedicated to that right now. So if you just take that and understand the autism understanding is just an extension of the same understanding that allows us to now know that the gut bacteria cause rheumatoid arthritis. Now, how crazy was that 5 years ago?
Right.
From certain people in the medical field.
Okay. We'll say strongly associated with rheumatoid.
Strongly associated. And they're now saying that MS is strongly associated with a breakdown in the gut. So the gut is now being extensively explored. And I would say to you that if you are an autistic mom and you've taken your kid off of gluten, or you've done probiotics, or you've gone to a functional medicine practitioner who is competent and has walked you through a protocol, and your son's doing better, and sometimes your daughter, just understand you're not crazy, okay? And just understand, don't be bullied into changing what you're doing if it's working. Because if it's working, it's working. Understand, as one of these articles said, we don't know everything about it at this point in time. But I will tell you, they are on it now. The gut is like the center of the research universe at this point, which it wasn't even 5 years ago. Okay, so we're like about 99 and 9/10% sure they're going to be making even further, more definitive connections between the gut and brain function in general. Mm-hmm. So clearly the gut affects brain fog. Mm-hmm. Clearly it can along with stress hormones cause short-term memory loss. It can cause a number of abnormalities in brain function. And the autistic spectrum disorder is simply one part of that. And I'll go one step further to say, our guess is there's going to be an autoimmunity involved in this too. That's a guess at this point in time, but that's based on clinical observations, okay? But without a doubt, I think it's a disservice to those people out there who are on the fence, who are researching, who are trying everything they can to help their children, because their children are kind of semi being blown off, okay? And then to gain success, and then to have a credible article like that show up in a credible publication by credible scientists, and then have someone kind of create confusion in anybody who might have read that is not okay. So that person needs to become more objective, not be so stuck in their position, maybe to be right. I don't know what it is. All I know is that person needs to look at the overall data, and they need to understand that they're on the wrong side of what the research says. They're on the wrong side of what clinical results say, and they're going to be on the wrong side of what comes out eventually when we do know all there is to know about the gut, if that ever happens, or a lot more than what we need to know about the gut. So that was the effort. We'll be looking forward to hearing what the Twitter world or whatever it is says on that. But we feel we're pretty solid in this position, and we feel very comfortable in presenting it to you. So
yeah, that's it.
So that's it.
So we'll see you next week. Again, if you want those scientific references, go to powerhealthtalk.com, and you can find the ones that I specifically mentioned. And we hope this was of help. So we'll see you next week.
See you next week.